Welcome to the Damage Report. I am Rayyvana, filling in for John Idarola, who is out watching his newborn baby, which is so exciting, and he's grateful for everybody who's been congratulating him. With that said, we're gonna have a great show today. We've got updates on the indictment you might have forgotten about, the documents case. We're going to be talking about the Republican field as the primary moves forward. We're going to talk about a really sad story out of California. A woman was murdered for her support of the LGBTQ community. And joining me to discuss all these stories and more is Jessica Burbank, Rebel HQ contributor. Jessica, thank you so much for being here with me today.
I can think of no two better babysitters for the show.
We're watching John's other baby. All right, are you ready to get into this first story?
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right, everybody, we're gonna trigger warning. We're gonna watch a Ben Shapiro clip.
You may think that the election of 2024 is about, getting rid of Joe Biden. But according to Matt, and I assume according to much of Team Trump, what it's really about is you funding Donald Trump's legal bills. I certainly have an interest in Donald Trump fighting his legal battles. That's fine. Is that my primary interest as an American citizen who pays taxes? Is that like the thing I care about the most? If I have to prioritize, is it Donald Trump's legal cases or is it beating Joe Biden? If it's Donald Trump's legal cases, that's fine. The dude's got a legal fund. He's not asked anybody to donate to his legal fund. Instead, he's sort of laundering the money from his campaign into his legal fund. So you give money to his campaign and then he uses it for his legal costs. Is that why you're donating? Is because you care that much about his legal fund? Fine. He should open a legal fund and you can give to it. Or do you care about beating Joe Biden? Donald Trump could theoretically win all of his legal cases and still not beat Joe Biden.
That was the tiniest whisper in a very high-pitched, fast-paced voice of pushback from conservatives amid all of Trump's many legal problems. So when Shapiro says Matt, the person he's referring to is CPAC chair Matt Schlapp, who tweeted this. I'm sorry, I'm immature. I laughed at the last name Schlapp, who tweeted this out over the weekend when someone asked why all the other GOP candidates should drop out. Posted this tweet. The sooner we unify behind a nominee, that sooner we can use It's really good that the CPAC chair is tweeting something that is so devoid of grammatical correctness. Anyway, that sooner we can use resources that to fund the defenses of everyone indicted for being a Trump Republican. This has become about a bigger principle than just one man. This has become about, again, it's like Oppenheimer. Anyway, Republican idiocracy aside, Ben Shapiro wasn't done because he's also annoyed that Trump isn't paying his former lawyers who helped him try to steal the election. So let's watch this clip.
The notion that what this campaign should actually be is about funding Donald Trump's legal troubles. By the way, it's not clear that he's funding anybody else's legal troubles. He's got a bunch of lawyers who are very loyal to him. And the minute that they said that they are not in favor of him being the nominee, apparently he's cut them off. That includes Jenna Ellis. Right? Jenna Ellis is out there basically asking for donations to her legal fund. And I urge people to give to Jenna Ellis's legal fund, by the way. But Jenna Ellis is now unpersoned because she's not sufficiently sycophantic to Trump personally. Donald Trump is supposedly one of the richer people on planet Earth. According to Donald Trump, he's worth up to $10 billion. Why is he using his campaign funds to fund his legal problems? This is a serious question. Why? I mean, shouldn't he be using them to beat Joe Biden? Forget about the idea that his own supporters are really hoping he'll use the funding, not for his legal funding, but for everything else. Isn't there a tacit admission there that either he's not worth as much money as he says he is, or that he would rather use your money to fund his legal bills than his own money to fund his legal bills? Like, why is his money not being used for his own legal problems and for the legal problems of his allies, by the way?
Unlike Ben Shapiro, I would very much urge you not to donate to Jenna Ellis's legal fund because she is guilty of sin and deserves what's coming to her. But speaking of Jenna Ellis and Trump's many sycophantic attorneys, it's time for this week's Monday Menace. All right, when it comes to Jenna Ellis, as we were just talking about, she tweeted this out. It says, I was reliably informed Trump isn't funding any of us who are indicted. Would this change if he becomes the nominee? Why then? Not now. I totally agree this has become a bigger principle than just one man. So why isn't MAGA Inc. funding everyone's defense. Now, I don't know. I was saying this morning. Who did Jenna Ellis and all of these other, co-conspirators? Who did they think they were getting in bed with? Did they think they were getting in bed with an honest man who's known for uplifting the people around them? No. They were getting in bed with Donald Trump, the biggest con man this country's ever seen. I mean, it's so ridiculous that they even expected this, especially after she stopped supporting Trump and started supporting DeSantis. Trump is a petty bitch. Why did you think he was going to stick by your side? And inexplicably, she's still defending Donald Trump. Let's take a look at this tweet. She wrote out, "I don't care if you love or hate Trump. What they're doing to him is unconscionable and unconstitutional. I think Ron DeSantis should say that far more strongly. It would show leadership in this turning point in America's history." And of course, Ron DeSantis isn't going to say that strongly. His only chance of ever becoming president is if Donald Trump is literally forbidden from running, because you can run for president even behind bars, and I think he still might do better than DeSantis if he was locked up in jail. But let's take a quick look at how much of Trump's campaign donations have been used for his legal bills. Even before he entered the 2024 race, Save America PAC was paying for his legal efforts as he faced federal and state investigations into his business practices, his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, and his handling of classified documents after he left the White House. And the New York Times reported on this. They wrote that in 2021 and 2022, Save America spent $16 million on legal bills. In the first 6 months of this year, almost a third of the money raised by his committees and the super PAC backing him has gone towards legal costs. More than $27 million, according to a Times analysis of federal records. It continues on. In February 2022, the PAC said it had $122 million in cash on hand. By the beginning of this year, that number was down to $18 million, filings show. More than $16 million of the money spent went to legal bills, some for witnesses in the investigations, but mostly to firms representing Mr. Trump. A further $60 million was transferred in late 2022 to MAGA Inc., a super PAC supporting Mr. Trump. So much of the money that these super PACs and PACs have received in donations has gone specifically to Trump's legal bills. And let's just wrap it up with this last bit of reporting from the New York Times. An analysis of campaign finance reports show Trump's political committees have paid out at least $59.2 million to more than 100 lawyers and law firms since January 2021, when a mob of his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol and many of his current legal woes began in earnest. Now, honestly, Jessica, I think if you're a Trump supporter, you probably don't care if the money that you're donating is going to his legal defenses. You probably even support that. So, I mean, to that end, should they care? Is this really that big of a deal for the Republican Party?
Yeah, at this point, is it a campaign expense? Because he can't serve as president from prison. So if you want him to be president, he's got to beat these cases. The money has to go to that. Jenna Ellis defending him. It's like that one girl at brunch who has this ex who cheated on her and set her house on fire. And she's like, but guys, he's not so bad. And all of us are like, oh, stop defending him. He was terrible to you. But yeah, I think we can't be mad that he's paying legal fees with the campaign funds, because all of his supporters are like, we need to keep him out of prison. He needs to fight these charges, which most of them say he doesn't deserve, right? Mm-hmm. Then we have this Reuters Ipsos poll at the beginning of the month or end of July that says 42% of Republicans would not vote for Donald Trump if he was convicted of a felony. So he has to beat these cases to earn the votes of his supporters, I'm sure some of which are donating to his campaign and read that question on the poll or heard that question on the poll and didn't connect the current charges and indictments against Donald Trump with him committing a felony. I think they genuinely believe this means Donald Trump will walk out in broad daylight tomorrow and murder someone. I really think that's what they believed when they heard that question. $27 million for legal bills that came from campaign funds. He's not running for president. It's very possible he's just running from prison.
I think you're so exactly right about them not connecting the dots between Trump having been indicted on felony charges and them not wanting to vote because they think a felony is, being homeless in San Francisco. That's the worst crime that somebody could commit in this country. They're like, well, Donald Trump's never done that. But there is some interesting criticism coming out from within the Republican Party. Obviously, Ben Shapiro has been a little bit riding on the DeSantis train. I don't know, maybe it's just like out of two people who are extremely awkward and unlikable finding each other. But there's some other members of the Republican Party, namely, let's start with House GOP member Ken Buck, who was on CNN and wasn't happy with the threats that were being lobbied at grand jurors and judges.
First of all, the discussion that you had earlier about this threats that are being made and other actions towards grand jurors and people who are just doing their civic duty, showing up and doing their job as Americans is despicable. And if you're innocent, start acting like it. I can't think of anything worse than trying to attack the criminal justice system because you're a criminal defendant. And I think that's just terrible of any defendant to go through that process.
I mean, and really what he's doing is saying the bare minimum, right? I mean, at the very least, all he's trying to do is cover up his own ass for involvement with the party when eventually some rabid Trump supporter does do something. Because we covered last week that the names, the pictures, some of the home addresses of the people who were on the grand jury have been being spread in right-wing circles on right-wing websites. So, I mean, he doesn't want to have any connection to that when something inevitably horrible happens. But Senator Bill Cassidy actually went a little bit further than that and flat out said that Trump should drop out of the race.
Do you think that Donald Trump should drop out of the race?
I think so, but obviously that's up to him. I mean, you're just asking me my opinion, but he will lose to Joe Biden if you look at the current polls.
Jessica, is there any weight to these criticisms from within the Republican Party of Donald Trump? I mean, he's far and away the primary might as well be done. He's won it, right? At this point, he's so far ahead of the competition, if you could even call them that he's already secured the nomination. So is this just sort of pointless?
Yeah, that's a good question because you have the majority of the Republican Party supporting Donald Trump. So to break from Donald Trump and say, well, he should act like he's innocent, he's clearly not a good guy, he's broken the law. Is that going to change the views of the voters in the Republican Party? No. I think at this point, that just, sows further division in the Republican Party, which I'm fine with, along the lines of who is a populist and who is someone who wants things to continue business as usual of the establishment of the Republican Party, basically handpicking candidates, deciding who is a member of the political class and worthy of political office. It has that vibe. Do I think Donald Trump is a criminal and not qualified for public office? Absolutely. But to the right-wing populists and just general populist working class people who something in the Republican Party message has connected with them on the populist side, are we going to change their minds by having the establishment guys go on nighttime news and say, Trump might not be so good? I don't think it's going to make a big difference.
Exactly. And at what point, as just maintaining your membership as being part of the Republican Party, are you just being complicit? And the party that has just become Trump, the party whose platform was whatever Trump decided it was that day on a whim. I mean, the party can be described as nothing other than sycophantic. It is just Donald Trump. And I think you're right. Like some of these establishment people maybe want to get back to the Republican Party of before Donald Trump, just because maybe they personally don't like him on policy issues. I really don't think that there's any sort of disagreement there.
I think the charge that seems most likely, seems almost a slam dunk, is the one related to mishandling of classified documents. So I can't comment on the rest of them because apparently you have to prove state of mind. You'll have attorneys after me that can comment on that. But there's at least one, which is the mishandling of the federal documents, which is seems, again, a very strong case. They have a tape recording of him speaking of it. If that is proven, then we may have a candidate for president who has been convicted of a crime. I think Joe Biden needs to be replaced, but I don't think Americans will vote for someone who's been convicted.
To be honest, I do not share his confidence that Joe Biden is going to win the election. I mean, let's just look how close the polling is from this trip from the Hill. If the election for president were being held today and the candidates were Biden and Trump, who would you vote for? I mean, that is neck and neck. I really don't understand how you're undecided at this point after having seen a Joe Biden presidency and seen a Donald Trump presidency. But maybe, Jessica, that's an indictment of what Biden has or hasn't done during these, years that he's been president. How are you feeling about potential general? And we could say potential, but we pretty much know that the general election will be between Biden and Trump.
It's crazy to imagine the timing of this trial, that we could see an indictment of Donald Trump or a conviction of Donald Trump around the same time of the general election. What does that mean for our democracy? What does that mean for his supporters? Because it's very clear to me, because all of this played out in the court of public opinion, there's evidence that Trump knew he lost. This isn't a matter of free speech, like a lot of members of the right are framing it as, that he was just telling people to watch TV on January 6th. And he was just saying, the election was stolen from me. Please help me investigate this. He clearly knew that he lost fair and square and was asking people to find votes. He's asking people to commit a crime to overturn an election. He was asking electors to vote in a direction that people didn't cast ballots for them to vote in. And so when you're asking people deliberately to commit crimes to overturn an election that you knew you lost, that documented communication of you making it very clear you knew you lost and that you wanted people to help you overturn it, you're asking people to commit crimes. That's not protected under free speech, especially when you're their boss. You have power over them. And so this idea that this case is some kind of free speech thing and we're not going to be able to prove that Trump was in the state of mind, that he actually knew he lost fair and square. Now he's giving speeches like, I knew I won. It's a ridiculous situation, but it's clear from the evidence that we know about, because it's all public, that this is not going to go favorably for Donald Trump. So what kind of a situation do we have if Joe Biden doesn't win the popular vote and Trump wins the popular vote and then is convicted of a crime? Where does that leave us as a country? That is terrifying.
Yeah, terrifying is definitely the right word for what, I mean, just thinking about the instability. I mean, we already had a clear winner in the last election and then an attack on the Capitol. Trump supporters literally storming the Capitol because he told them to. I don't even really want to imagine what would happen what they would do if he wins the election and then has to go to prison. Could he just pardon himself? I mean, I guess it's sort of something that I hope we don't have to figure out. So that was talking a lot about the Georgia indictments. Let's get into the indictments of all, because there's just been so many. Let's, talk a little bit about the federal documents indictment, because we do have to measure expectations on the case because Judge Cannon has been assigned to be the judge on the case. But two of Trump's former allies have slashed some holes in his defense. So let's start with Pence.
Had you heard anything to suggest that the president had issued an order, even a standing order, declassifying documents like that?
Well, first off, the handling of classified materials is enormously serious in the life of the nation. But I can't really comment on your reporting. But in my case, I was never made aware of any broad-based effort to declassify documents.
So Pence was asked this in response to reporting that surfaced on Mark Meadows. And so let's get into a little bit of what we learned from that reporting. ABC News reported that former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows has told Special Counsel Jack Smith's investigators that he could not recall Trump ever ordering or even discussing declassifying broad sets of classified materials before leaving the White House, nor was he aware of any standing order from Trump authorizing the automatic declassification of materials taken out of the Oval Office. Oof. If you are Donald Trump or one of his attorneys. Now, the sources said Meadows told investigators he did not witness Trump himself packing boxes and was unaware that Trump had taken any government records, including classified documents. As we know, one of the allegations is that he used his aides to pack the documents up, specifically telling them to do it. But Meadows himself might be in some hot water for trying to cover this up. So from that same report, ABC News has also reviewed an early draft of the prologue to Meadows' book, The Chief's Chief, fantastic title, no notes, about his time serving as Trump's chief of staff for the final months of the Trump White House, which includes a description of Trump having a classified war plan on the couch at his office in Bedminster, New Jersey, at a meeting attended by Meadows' ghostwriter and publicist, but not Meadows himself. The reference to that document being in Trump's possession was removed before the book was published. It continues on. Multiple sources tell ABC News Meadows acknowledged to investigators that he asked that the paragraph be changed and that it would be problematic had Trump had such a document in his possession. Sources tell ABC News that Meadows told special counsel investigators that he did not discuss making those edits with Trump. Now, just for anyone who needs a reminder on what Trump's defenses are, what we're expecting them to be in this case. Trump has insisted that he declassified all the materials before he left office. Again, I mean, to maintain this point, I'll just stop there and bring you in, Jessica, just to maintain that defense when we know that that's not true. We have transcripts of him admitting, him literally saying, I could have declassified this when I was president, but now that I'm not president, I can't declassify it anymore. And then it just be taking on a whole new life in the person him saying that to, being Kid Rock. I mean, he has no defense.
No, not at all. And even Joe Rogan, someone who endorsed Bernie Sanders, is saying something along the lines of, well, Joe Biden had declassified documents in his garage. Mike Pence had declassified documents, or rather classified documents that they didn't declassify while they were president. And he's like, they're just like me for real. Like, I had some classified stuff. They had classified stuff. I'm the only one in trouble. What's up with that? That is comparing apples and oranges. I've used this analogy before, but it's like saying, okay, Mike Pence was caught stealing a candy bar, leaving a gas station. Then you have the cashier say, hey man, you didn't pay for that. And Mike goes, oh, sorry, didn't realize I was holding it, goes in, gives it back. Donald Trump walked out with like a flat screen TV. He had so many documents in that bathroom in Mar-a-Lago. And then they're like, hey man, are you stealing that? And then he laughs, starts running with it, and posts on Truth Social about how he has the TV. And it's no big deal because it's basically the same thing as if I paid for it with a credit card because I wouldn't have paid for it yet. No, not at all. That's what we're talking about here. It's not the same thing at all. And that's why Trump is indicted. And that's why there aren't charges against Joe Biden and Mike Pence.
I think we're being really unfair to Donald Trump here. I mean, who amongst us doesn't, while using the bathroom, reach for tactical invasion plans of Iran, just light reading material? I mean, I think that that's the perfect analogy. And the defenders of Trump, they don't have any legs to stand on. Trump himself doesn't have a leg to stand on. And we'll keep everybody updated as we watch the progress of this and his many, many indictments moving forward. But we have to go to a break. Stick around because we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Damage Report. I'm Rayyvana filling in for John Iadarola, joined today by Jessica Burbank, and we've got more stories for you. So let's jump right into this next one. Now, obviously, there's been plenty of talk about MAGA being a cult. And this latest polling from CBS and YouGov shows that there is some strong evidence, if there wasn't enough already, to back that up. So let's start with what they were polling on Trump's indictments. First one, latest Trump indictment, which concerns you more? From likely GOP primary voters, 77% said they're most concerned about whether or not the indictment is politically motivated. Only 8% say that they're concerned that Trump tried to overturn a presidential election. I got to stop there, Jessica, because they're like, the primary argument that they give is that they're trying to protect democracy, that they want to protect this institution of democracy. But only 8% of them actually give a damn that Trump tried to overturn a presidential election.
Yeah, that's the thing. They don't care if Trump's crimes were politically motivated, if trying to overturn the election was something politically motivated, because it's politically motivated in the direction that they vote in and would like the country to go in. And so, yeah, they're more concerned that they're trying to sabotage Trump's chance of winning in 2024 than whether or not he committed a real crime to coup the democratically elected, fairly leader of the country. They're not as concerned about that. That is concerning because it speaks to the political mind of the typical GOP voter. They're not very interested in democracy. That's concerning in and of itself, because where does that come from? And I think it comes from Merrick Garland sitting on his hands the first few months of being in office. Because if Trump were indicted shortly after the crime was committed, it would be much harder to push this narrative that it's being done just to thwart his chances of becoming president again.
Exactly. And you know what? I think I think that we shouldn't try to get into the mind of a crazy person, is what Nina Turner always says, but lest you get stuck there. But let's take just a little bit more of a deep dive into the minds of the GOP voters through this YouGov poll, because they were asked the reason they support Trump within its, whether or not they support Trump because of his legal troubles. This is what the poll says. Are you considering Trump? Sorry, let me repeat that. Show support during legal fights, a reason you're considering Trump. 73% say that it is a reason. 27% say not a reason. Now, it gets even more insane with this next one, because they were asked who they feel tell them the truth the most. Oh my God, this is so depressing. Number one, 71%, Donald Trump. He is their source of news. Whatever he says is the truth. He is the God, King, Emperor. 71% say Trump. 63% say friends and family. 56% say conservative media figures. I just want you to know that they're getting their news from Dan Bongino, and that should scare all of you. And then 42% say religious leaders, which we did a really fun story last week about one of the religious leaders who continuously was making proclamations or having, visions about the future as it pertains to Trump, and every single one was proven to not happen. So Democratic Representative Jim Hines called out the latest polling and reasoned that this is why there's violent threats against Trump's political opponents. So let's watch.
I sort of hate to use the bombastic language, but these are people who have joined a cult. And therefore, when Donald Trump says the FBI is off of me, or when one of his proxies like Marjorie Taylor Greene says the FBI, the Democrats are doing this, which of course is demonstrably nonsense, they get pretty fired up. And it doesn't surprise me at all that, these jurors, these judges, federal judges are being threatened. This is where we have come because so many Americans decided to join the cult of Donald Trump.
Jessica, I don't think it's bombastic language at all to call it a cult. I mean, we just saw that most of them get their primary source of news is Donald Trump himself. It doesn't matter how many contradictory things he says. They'll just, whatever the next thing is, that's what they believe at any given moment.
Yeah, it's really telling that they believe Donald Trump tells the truth more than their friends and family, conservative media figures, and religious leaders. The problem is the people they're surrounded with, right? Isn't it people that are vulnerable to joining a cult, the people that are surrounded by those who don't support and love them? If you don't believe the people around you are telling you the truth and Trump tells the truth more, you're just susceptible to this kind of demagoguery because of who you're surrounded with. And I think the quote of the question they asked, are you considering Donald Trump to because he's going through these legal fights? Are you showing support for him because of the legal fights? That is ridiculous. Why should I vote for you for president? Well, listen, I'm just going through a really tough time right now. Please vote for me for president during these trying times. What? When has that ever been a reason to vote for someone for president? It's obviously a cult, whether it's a cult of personality, a cult of he gives me hope because my life is so abysmal that I can't trust anyone in it, but maybe he's telling me the truth. These are not reasons to vote for a president. What's his policy platform? What is he doing for the economy and the country? Nowhere near a reason for voting for him. So it's not inflammatory to say this is a cult. What else do you call that?
Right. And that question, I think it really does give you so much insight into the minds of the Republicans, because it's like, oh, well, Trump is a small bean and has bad things happen to him, so I must support. And it's literally like, I pity the man. So I'm going to vote for him. Oh, he's just going through so much, never mind the fact that the circumstances are all of his own making. But let's continue on, because they didn't just ask about Donald Trump. They asked about some other candidates as well. They asked if the responders felt like DeSantis could beat Biden. And you can see here the massive change from June to now. Definitely went from 50% to 35%. And then in the long shot category, you see there was also an increase as well. So DeSantis is losing support over time. And then this next one, doesn't surprise me, but they asked about Mike Pence's actions on January 6th. When they were asked if he did the right thing, MAGA 21% said he did the right thing, 38% said not sure, but 41% said the wrong thing. Just because these people would have been happy if Mike Pence overturned the Democratic results of the election. That's what they wanted. Is it surprising? They were out there chanting, "Hang Mike Pence."
If they think Mike Pence should pick the president, we should ask them, do you think Mike Pence should pick the president for 2024? If they thought he should do it in 2020, why is Mike Pence not our single member of the Electoral College? Forget what the popular vote is. Just let Mike Pence decide. There's a clear reason why we don't have that happen. Very clearly, he did the wrong thing, but that is not a part of their political imagination. They just wanted Donald Trump to be president, regardless of the circumstances, even if it cost us, our entire Democratic project. No big deal. That's fine.
Right. But that's actually their super secret plan to protect democracy. Yes. I'll have you know.
Yes.
Okay. Let's move into this next story. Very, very sad story coming out of California, because America is not only an increasingly hostile place for members of the LGBTQ community, but for allies of the LGBTQ community as well, because a clothing store owner was shot and killed in front of her shop for simply displaying a pride flag. Let's get into the details of this truly horrific story from ABC News. Laura Ann Carlton, a married mother of 9 children, was killed Friday outside her clothing store in Cedar Glen, an unincorporated San Bernardino County community on the shores of Lake Arrowhead, according to a statement from the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Office. Through further investigation, detectives learned the suspect made several disparaging remarks about a rainbow flag that stood outside the store before shooting Carlton, according to the Sheriff's Office statement. Now, the shooter then fled on foot until the police caught up with him. There was a confrontation and he was shot and killed by the police. So there won't be a trial or any real form of justice for this. We have a picture of Carlton. I want to put it up on the screen. I also want to take a minute to read a statement that I think speaks volumes about Carlton's character from the Lake Arrowhead LGBTQ community. It says, "Today was a very sad day for Lake Arrowhead and for the LGBTQ community. Our friend and supporter, Lori Carlton, was murdered defending her LGBTQ plus pride flags in front of her store in Cedar Glen, California," the group wrote in a statement. Lori did not identify as LGBTQ plus, but spent her time helping and advocating for everyone in the community. She will be truly missed. And it's stories like this that make me so, so angry that homophobes, and right-wing anti-LGBTQ activists will have the framing of the issue as though they're being persecuted, that their religious freedom is being encroached on by gay people simply existing. But that's very much not the case, because those homophobes will take guns, they'll go to gay nightclubs, they'll go to gay bars, and they'll shoot everybody that they see, and they'll kill people for simply supporting gay people. She wasn't even a member of the community, just an ally and a supporter. And yet those homophobes will have you believe that they're being persecuted. Gay people are getting hate crimed, killed in the street. Supporters of the gay community are getting killed in the street, but they want you to believe that they're the real victims. It is despicable, Jessica.
Yeah. Despicable comparison as well, to think that, I don't know, there's just a typical social relationship of someone who is very outwardly a lover of Jesus Christ, right? There is some sentiment where it's like, that's a little bit cringe. That's a normal social relationship. For someone to say, your way of life isn't for me, I don't like it too much. It is extreme to say, you're pushing your way of life on me because I have to see it, and therefore I'm going to commit an act of violence against you because they're upset that some people think it's cringe to be obsessed with Christianity. That is just normal social relationships, to say you have your way of life and I have mine. But to make it something that is so deeply political and then personal and then something worth committing an act of violence over is ridiculous. And it's not something that's new, but it's something that has changed very recently over time. Pride used to be the type of parade where you're like, I'm proud to be gay. I'm proud to love women and love who I love. It's called pride. We had Pride in Charlotte this past weekend, and there were so many people that were wearing shirts that just said, do you, kiss whoever you want. Who you love is your business. It's basically just asking for permission to exist. So this went from an event that was like, I'm so proud to be gay, that now, because of the current political and social conditions, it's just, please let me be who I am, asking for permission. That is so sad. I don't want to be hurt just because I exist. And now people are getting hurt because they support other people's existence. We have to realize that we have let cultural issues get so politicized in the direction where someone can fly a Nazi flag and they're the subject of less controversy and violence than someone who flies a pride flag outside of their business. That's a sad state of affairs for our country.
Exactly. And, you know, we absolutely do not have to tolerate the intolerant, because tolerating, you know, these fascistic opinions on particularly LGBTQ community minorities, you know, allows for this type of behavior. They don't want to tolerate us. They don't even want to allow us to exist. So there is in no way, shape, or form any reason to tolerate them.
We have a strand in our party that views supporting Trump as whether you are a rhino or not. And so you could be the most conservative person since sliced bread. Unless you're kissing his rear end, they will somehow call you a rhino. So it's been totally detached from principle and what you actually believe and results. And it's more about, you know, just what faction you happen to do.
I like the idea that the worst thing you could be called as a conservative is a rhino, like it's some sort of anti-conservative slur. Also, I didn't know that sliced bread was conservative, but that, you know, kind of makes sense because it's bland and it goes stale quickly. So maybe he is onto something there. But he's got more here, including what MAGA is calling his basket of deplorables moment.
So there'll be people who are huge Trump supporters, like in Congress, who have like incredibly liberal left-wing records that's really just atrocious, and yet they're viewed as by some of these folks as like really, really good. Then you have other people, you know, like a Congressman Chip Roy, who's endorsed me, Congressman Thomas Massey. These guys have records of principle, fighting the swamp, that are second to none, and yet they will be attacked by some of these people and called rhinos. So it's just been totally detached from any type of substance, and ultimately, a movement can't be about the personality of one individual. The movement has got to be about what are you trying to achieve on behalf of the American people, and that's got to be based in principle. Because if you're not rooted in principle, if all we are is listless vessels that's just supposed to follow, you know, whatever happens to come down the pike on Truth Social every morning, that's not going to be a durable movement.
Well, then maybe you shouldn't be a member of the Republican Party if that's not the base that you want to appeal to. And I'll just say that DeSantis didn't have any issues with the Republican cult of the Trump cult of the Republican Party when he was, as Trump described, crying on the phone, begging Donald Trump for an endorsement for his gubernatorial election the first time around. And I mean, let's be honest, the only reason that he won that election was because there was a drug sex scandal with the Democratic candidate and because he got that Donald Trump endorsement. Jessica, we've been discussing how deeply in Trump's pocket as members of the cult, the Republican Party is. What kind of political motivation would DeSantis have to attack that base?
I don't know if it's a political motivation or if it's the small boy that is within Ron DeSantis that is upset that he is being called a name and that he isn't as popular as the other guy that's calling him the mean name. And so the response is, I think you make the accurate comparison, the kind of thing that Hillary Clinton did, where it's support the establishment or else you're a deplorable. Support the political establishment or else you're a listless vessel. He was not someone who was giving a message of populism in any possible way. He wasn't governing as a populist for the benefit of working people. We saw insurance premiums go up, 102 or 206, I think the accurate figure is, percent under DeSantis. We saw farmers insurance leave the state, all the while he's suing Disney and Anheuser-Busch for speaking out against his Don't Say Gay policy, which, by the way, is the kind of political agenda that would lead to overturning Citizens United. And I'm positive that his donors were not happy about that kind of message, questioning corporate personhood that is used for the very campaign dollars that fuel his campaign. That's probably why he's had this major switch up of, you know what, I wish we could move on from the Disney thing, because his donors rely on that exact ruling by the Supreme Court that this kind of policy would call into question if they can't make certain statements within their political free speech with their actions, and instead the governor of Florida should tell them what to do and say. So DeSantis is in this crazy position where him actually being a listless vessel for corporate lobbyists has gotten him into this position. Now he's so frustrated with it that he's calling the people who refuse to support him listless vessels. This is literally his Hillary Clinton deplorables moment.
Right. I think that listless vessel is a pretty good descriptor for Ron DeSantis himself. And you're exactly right. His pathetic reversal on his position on the Disney lawsuit to now just be like, I don't want to do it anymore. Can you please stop? I don't like this. I want it just to be dropped. Forget about it. Forget I ever said anything. It's so absolutely absurd and pathetic. And I think pathetic is the word that I would use to sum up his entire campaign thus far, from the, embarrassing launch event he did on Twitter with technical issues that was essentially just Elon Musk, pleasuring himself to his popularity. And DeSantis not really getting a good word at edgewise. And I mean, come on, you don't do a town hall as your launch event. That's when you focus on your issues, you get your platform out there. I mean, and so many, just to have a parade of speakers come on the microphone and say, oh, Elon, I love you so much, and then never even address DeSantis. From that, to every meet and greet event he's done so far, to the listless vessels comment. I mean, and it's no surprise that the person running his campaign manager, has never run any campaign ever before. It is a giant disaster. And of course, nobody wants Ron DeSantis to be the candidate for the Republican Party, but there's really nobody in the Republican Party who I think that we would say we do want the candidate to be. But back to his jabs against Trump, because the Trump administration is jabbing back. Now, MAGA Inc. spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said this in a statement: Ron DeSantis must immediately apologize. I'm sorry, I'm taking a second. This is so childish. This is so childish to be like, Trump supporters are listless vessels, and then for Trump's campaign to be like, oh, you must apologize. This is so, I'm sorry. Donald Trump stood on the debate stage next to Ted Cruz, said that his wife was so ugly that nobody would ever want to sleep with her, never apologized, and then had Ted Cruz phone banking for him. But the idea that they're so offended by this statement. And you know what? I wouldn't even be surprised if Ron DeSantis did apologize, because that's how absolutely pathetic he is. But let's bring the statement back up and I'll read the rest of it. To Hillary Clinton, Trump supporters are deplorables. To Ron DeSantis, they are listless vessels. The truth is, Trump supporters are patriots. A patriot is what you are when you storm the American Capitol and try to overturn the results of a Democratic election. But I'll continue. Ron DeSantis is showing his true colors. The pressure of polling in third place is getting to DeSantis, and now he is lashing out at the very same voters who got him elected governor. DeSantis must immediately apologize for his disgraceful insult. Now, there is like a speck of truth in there, because it was Trump supporters that got DeSantis elected. Of course, when you're running in a primary against the man that they actually support, Donald Trump, you have to find a way to distinguish yourself from him, stand out as a candidate, but you can't do it in a way that offends that base of supporters, because you still need their votes. It was really a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, when the Republican Party accepted the Trump doctrine as their entire platform, that's their whole party, we're going to cater to the Trump base no matter what, they all shot themselves in the foot for moments like these. And DeSantis spokesperson did respond to this little cat fight that's going on. Brian Griffin tweeted this out. The dishonest media refuses to report the facts. Donald Trump and some congressional endorsers are listless vessels. Why? Because Trump and DC insiders feel he is entitled to your vote. Ron DeSantis believes your trust should be earned and has the vision, plan, and record to beat Joe Biden and reverse the decline of our country. That's why Ron DeSantis will be showing up on Wednesday night to debate, and Donald Trump will not. Not that I think the Trump supporters care much about it. And again, it's the same thing we were saying before the show. Why should Joe Biden, when he knows he's going to be the candidate for the Democratic Party, politically, why would he have a debate with the other candidates? I think it would be good for democracy. I think he should do it, but he knows he's going to be the candidate. Why give them that level of legitimacy? It's the same for Trump. He knows he's going to be the candidate. Why would he lend these debates and some of the, lower polling Republican candidates that legitimacy? From a politics perspective, I'm not making any comments on, from the this is good for our country and democracy perspective. Although I think that the entire Republican Party is not good for our country or democracy. I mean, Jessica, what's going on here? What is this sad little cat fight?
Yeah, Brian Griffin posting this on Twitter saying Donald Trump and some congressional endorsers are listless vessels. That is not what Ron DeSantis said. Ron DeSantis said the people who are MAGA calling anyone who doesn't support Donald Trump rhinos are the listless vessels, i.e. Donald Trump supporters. And so does Brian Griffin speak for the DeSantis campaign more than Ron DeSantis? I think that goes to show how much of a gaffe it was for DeSantis to say what he said, because his whole strategy was, I'm going to run for president and do it just to the right of Donald Trump. Literally, to poke fun at Donald Trump and say he shouldn't be the candidate because he's supported the LGBTQ plus community before. And here's an ad of him holding up the pride flag, and that's why I'm the better pick. That's absurd. He realized that running to the right of Donald Trump wasn't going to work, but he relies on Trump's supporters if he ever wants to win the presidency. And now he's just alienated all of them. So this absolutely is the nail in the coffin for his campaign. The cat fight's much bigger than just this one little comment. It's very clearly everyone around DeSantis knows he's tanking the campaign. They're trying to save it. And DeSantis just picked a losing strategy to start with. It wasn't ever going to go anywhere.
Right. And I mean, it really is, biting the hand that feeds here.
Yeah.
The Trump supporters, as we said, were the people who got him elected to, be the governor of Florida. I think he's really severely overestimated the support he has outside of his state. I mean, and he should recognize that, because every single place that he goes, he has to talk about Florida, and sort of reintroduce himself to the voters, because he doesn't have the built-in support that Trump does. He needs those voters. He needs their confidence, and he just can't wrap his head around that. But we'll keep everybody updated as this primary continues and as we move into the first of the debates on Wednesday. Don't forget to tune in here afterwards to watch Anna and Cenk break that down for you all. That's all the time we have if you are on linear. But if you're not, stick around because the aftermath is coming up right after this.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.